To convert in the metric system, we're going to use this metric chart. The basic units are listed here in the middle with all the prefixes listed in order by their meaning. So in this first problem, we are converting decigrams into grams. Remember, if it's just a D and not DA and then the gram, this is deca. Deca would be DA and then the metric unit, whereas deca is a D and then the metric unit behind it. So we're going from decigrams to grams for this problem. We're starting with 5 decigrams. So if we start in the decigrams box, to get from grams to decigrams, from decigrams to grams, starting here, we would move left 1 time. So we're going to move the decimal in 5 to the left 1 time. Remember, if a number does not have a decimal in it to start, like 5, we add a decimal behind it, then we can move it. And because we are going from decigrams to grams, we're moving 1 time to the left, so we move the decimal 1 time to the left. So the decimal is now here in front of the 5, which would give us 5/10 grams. You can put a 0 in front as a placeholder, but that 0 is optional. In the second problem, we're starting with 7 25 meters, and we're converting to millimeters. So we're starting at meters, and we have to get here to millimeters. So if we're starting here, we would have to move 1, 2, 3 times to the right. Since we had to move 3 times to the right on our chart, that tells us that we're going to have to move the decimal 3 times to the right in our problem. So the decimal is now here, back behind what will be a whole number. In the empty spot, we will fill in a 0. So this becomes 7,250 millimeters. In this example, we have 6 decaliters. Remember, the DA is the suffix abbreviation for deca. So we have a decaliter, and we're converting to liters. We're starting with 6. Remember, the decimal starts behind a whole number. So if we're starting at decaliters and we're going 2 liters, that's moving 1 time to the right. So that means we have to move the decimal 1 time to the right. The decimal goes there. We have put a 0 in the empty spot, and we have 60 liters. If you notice in these last 2 examples, the decimal has ended up behind the number, which means the numbers are whole numbers. If there's no digit behind the decimal, you don't need the decimal, and you leave it off in your answer, as you can see we did in both of these. Now getting to the comparing problems, here we're going to put either greater than, less than, or equal to here in this box. To do that, we need to either convert the centigrams to grams or convert the grams to centigrams. It doesn't matter which one you choose. I'm going to go ahead and change the grams into centigrams. If I'm starting with 6 grams, and I go to my chart, to get from grams to centigrams, I would have to move 2 times to the right. So I'm going to move the decimal 2 times to the right. The decimal ends up back there. I put zeros in the empty spots, so that gives me 600 centigrams. So now we know that the 6 grams equals the 600 centigrams. So we're comparing 650 centigrams to 600 centigrams. 650 is greater than 600. Here we are comparing 64 kilometers or kilometers to 6 4/10 hectometers. Again, we can choose to convert whichever one we'd like. This time I'm going to go ahead and convert this one to show it a little bit differently. I'm converting kilometers to hectometers on this one. I'm starting with 6. Now the decimal starts behind it. I'm sorry. Let's fix this really quickly. This isn't 6, this is 64. This is 64 kilometers. I'm starting with 64, and I'm going to convert that to hectometers. So if I start at kilometers and I need to get to hectometers, that would mean moving 1 time to the right on the chart. So that means I need to move move the decimal 1 time to the right here. So to go from kilometers to hectometers, I have to add a 0 there. So that would be 640 hectometers. We now know that 64 kilometers is the same thing as 640 hectometers. which is definitely more than 64, 6 4/10 hectometers. So the sign needed would be greater than. In case you're wondering how this would work the other way, I'll show you the problem working it from converting 6 4/10 hectometers into kilometers instead. So if we're starting with 6 4/10 and we're going from hectometers to kilometers, that would mean we would have to move one time to the left on the chart, which means we move the decimal one time to the left. If the decimal starts here, we move it one time to the left. It's now in front of the 6, which will give us 64 hundredths of a kilometer. And when we're comparing 64 kilometers to under 1 kilometer, 6 4/10 would be less than 1, we know 64 is greater.